This embarrassing moment happens to me again because I gave a talk in this hall yesterday, again about JavaScript ecosystem. But if yesterday I was talking only about one framework, today I will try to discover all the things, the cool things happening in JavaScript for test automation. So what I expect from you that probably you are considering starting using JavaScript for test automation. Maybe you already use it, but you want to see what alternatives does the ecosystem provide. Maybe you're just here to hear what cool things happening in the world, and maybe today is a good day to start using JavaScript. Okay, so my name is Michael Bodnarchuk. I'm from Kyiv. I do development of open source testing frameworks. Since 2015, I am into JavaScript test automation as well. So I really know how the ecosystem evolved, what frameworks were coming, how frameworks were changing. And yeah, that's like part of my job to discover and to use them. Yeah, I'm also tech consultant, but I think everyone on stage is something like a consultant, so it's not a very important. So I was always looking for the solutions that makes our tests easy to use, easy to write, easy to understand, and brings comfort to our life when we do testing. So not only comfort to our pocket, but also to our life. Okay, so I've heard that some of you are here for some call browser test automation. Okay, what should we choose for testing our web applications? Yeah, we should choose the JavaScript. Okay, maybe Java or Python, they worked fine yesterday, they worked fine years ago, years and years ago, maybe hundreds of years ago. Our grandparents used Java for test automation. With Selenium, this worked fine for them. But today we should change. Because yes, JavaScript is the future, because JavaScript is everywhere. It's in a browser, it's on the server, it's in the Electron desktop applications, it's on mobile phones, so JavaScript is taking the world. So if you would start test automation today, consider looking into this stack. And I'll try to persuade you to do so. So yes, JavaScript is the future and for test automation as well. So why would you choose JavaScript? Because it's simple language. Yeah, it's much more simpler than Java, Ruby, Python, whatever. But more important that it has very big, huge ecosystems that probably could fit into the black hole, and this black hole would collapse because the ecosystem is much larger than this black hole. So when you choose the tools for browser test automation, the word Selenium and browser test installation are not equal here because there are much more different solutions. So you are really not limited to this Selenium. And the next key point is that, hey, in browser, like if you open the dev tools like here, what do we have here? JavaScript. Yeah. So it's already in your website. Why would you choose another language? So JavaScript is simple, but no. So unlike all other languages of programming you were used to, in JavaScript you don't always know if this function returns something or you should wait for this function to return something. So because functions do not immediately say I've done this thing. So every hard calculation, every call in JavaScript can be asynchronous. And this means that we need to deal with this asynchronity. So if you want to do a network request, if you want to set a timer, if you want to read from file, it's everything asynchronous. So functions do not return the result immediately. It requires you to wait for this result. And if you mess the things up, you may use this result before it was actually processed. And the solution for this problem was introduced as promises. So I would try not to explain you what promises are, but if you will dive into the JavaScript, you will learn it, and probably that would be not the simplest thing in the world you will have to learn. But anyway, this talk is just for overview of ecosystem and not about language itself. So if we come to JavaScript and we try to set up our test automation, we should choose all the 4 parts of our testing framework. So we need to build it as a snowman. So we need to choose actual framework, assertions which will be built into this testing framework, the horsepower, what will actually drive our browser, and the CLI tool to execute those tests. So ecosystem is, again, as I said, it's really huge, and there are lots of different testing framework. If you will go and Google all of them, you will see the full comparisons, big overviews. Why would you choose this or that? The thing is, for end-to-end testing, it's not a big deal which one to choose. So again, to this list, Mocha is very popular. I would say it's a traditional testing framework which is used by Cypress, for instance. But not everyone uses Mocha. Today's modern alternative is Jest. It's a bit better for parallelization, but in the end, it's not a big deal which one you use as of today. So for browser test automation, it's not as important. Assertion library, yeah, they are not always built into your testing framework. You need to install additional npm packages for them. So again, it's not so a big deal which one will you use, but it's very recommended to use Chai assertion library, install it from npm, or use something that framework already provides to you. Some framework do, some framework not. So yeah, there are different assertions library. Use whatever you want. It's not really a big deal. So the big deal here is choosing the right browser driver. It's not a complete list of all the tools you can use to drive your browsers, but you see how many of stuff there was created in JavaScript. So we will overview through most of them and see where and when to use it. But before we do so, we need to consider how the tests will be executed. And this really depends on which browser driver testing framework you use. So some testing frameworks provide you with their own runner. Some testing framework require you to use the browser driver. So for instance, VDEO can be executed by its own CLI runner or from Mocha testing framework. So you will have to make a choice how the tests will be executed. For the same from Protractor, you can run it directly from Protractor or use the CLI tool from the testing framework. So yeah, it's a consequence of the previous choices you've made. So most interesting part is to learn what are those tools for driving browsers and how are they different. At first, let me clarify one important thing. There are 2 ways to control our browser, from outside and from inside. So when we use Selenium, we get an external control. So we say, hey, Selenium, open a browser, perform a click, and fill some fields. And this works on top of browser, on the operating system level. So with performing real clicks, real signals from operating system, controlling browser as a user would do. There's another approach, and it's based on the fact that inside the browser, inside each window, inside each tab, the JavaScript engine also works. So instead of controlling the full browser, we into the tab and we control the page by itself. So instead of performing a real click, so moving the mouse cursor to this element and clicking, we find this element in DOM and simulate this event by the JavaScript. So pros and cons of both approaches. So when we inside the tab, we can get more control out of the web page. For instance, if we deal with web elements, we don't need to transform them, proxify, or something like this. So we already have full control of application. We can do anything with it. However, we are limited to one tab. Not just one tab, I would say to one frame. Because in the different iframes, you lose control and it won't be the same. So we are really limited to one page, to one domain. We're limited to one tab, to one window. So yeah, once we got into tab, we have full control of it. But when something changed, we can lose this control. So the situation can go unpredictable. While if we do it with traditional tools like Selenium or some other tools I will show later, which provide you with external control, we can do everything that user can do. So create multiple instances of a browser, create multiple tabs, upload, download files. But interacting with the web page is a bit slower because yeah, we need to get into the tab, get some results out of a tab. So that can be a problem. But if we talk about real end-to-end testing, sure, you have to use tools which provide you external control, which your users would do so. Okay, let's dive in and see what the tools are and how can we use them. So, surprise, but in the JavaScript we have official Selenium library, which is the most popular library by now of Selenium-Webdriver integration, because there are not just one Selenium-Webdriver library in JavaScript. However, even it's the most popular one, no one really uses it. How is it possible? The case here is that even this official Selenium project release and maintain this library, they don't maintain documentation for it. The documentation is really bad. There is no dedicated good website for Selenium WebDriver library from Selenium project. So that's a shame for Selenium community that they do not come with at least friendly and good-looking documentation. Another problem, when you try to Google this library, you end up in the Selenium monorepo. You need to go through different folders of Java integrations, then you will find some bindings from Selenium in JavaScript, and that's all information you get from the Selenium WebDriver. So it's really hard to use this library for newbies. So if you start with Selenium WebDriver, okay, you can guess some API parts because it's really by design similar to Java, but it's completely different and it's really hard to start playing with it. So Selenium WebDriver was taken by a protractor team as underlying library. They wrote a good documentation for it. They made integration with Jasmine testing framework, with Angular. They created an awesome community. So most of consumers of Selenium WebDriver library are users of Protractor. I think everyone heard of Protractor. They have for now like million weekly installations. So most of JavaScript testing automation is powered by Protractor nowadays. And it was really great a few years ago. At this moment, I can't say this because it's the problem of their architecture. So the Selenium WebDriver will be hugely changed in Selenium WebDriver 4, and Protractor is based on Selenium WebDriver 3. So once this change will be completely applied, they will need to write all their stuff completely, and from what I see, they are trying to push the new version to production, but it's not going great. So they even tagged the release Protractor 6, but then they never published it because it was so bad, and no commits since June. So as of today, Protractor facing some problems because they need to make a shift to the new architecture, to the new library version, but the amount of work to be done is very, very big, so they're happy as they are. So I can't say this is a legacy library today, but if they won't do anything in about half of a year they can be in a big problem. And all the code bases for Protractor can be in a big problem because it will be desynchronized from the official Selenium development. So as you see, in Protractor, we develop very similarly to Java. The syntax was highly inspired by Java Selenium integration, but with some elements that can be useful for AngularJS. So the code is quite useful, but and quite familiar to you if you do some test automation. Probably if you were starting JavaScript long ago in tests, there was a very popular testing framework, Nightwatch.js, and people still use it. And I included it into the slides because some other the people was asked, hey, what about Nightwatch.js? I can't say anything good about Nightwatch.js on the state of 2019 because it was a good solution like 5 years ago, but now all the good stuff they have is this nice logo. Everything else is horrible. So even if you look into this code, you see that it's not so trivial as we've seen in Protractor. It's the idea that we need to set different locator strategies in this chain is very bad. So at this point, we started using XPath, then we switched to CSS. So when you write like click, you don't even know which locator is used in this moment, CSS or XPath. You need to scroll up to see if this use XPath or use CSS command is enabled. And by the way, if this chain of calls in Java is just syntax sugar, in JavaScript it's how it can operate and the only way, because again, I should remind you the word promises, that all the operations in test automation are not executed as they are. They return promise. So, because to communicate with the browser, you need to wait for a response. And it means that we need to add some commands that will listen to this response and then continue execution. And by changing these methods, we exactly specify that click that set value should happen after a click. If we break this promise chain, probably the test won't work. So all your tests will look like this: dot do something, dot do something, dot do something, and you never have a chance to break this by multiple line. So Protractor have solved this problem. I will show you how. But in the Nightwatch.js, your tests will be limited to this, and this really limits you in terms of refactoring, using page objects, using variables. So it's really horrible. Don't use Nightwatch.js, migrate from it. I've heard lots of stories that people are taking Nightwatch.js projects and migrating to something more modern. So today is a good day to start for you. Another Selenium implementation, by the way, Nightwatch.js is also a Selenium implementation, so it doesn't bring you anything more than just regular Selenium. So if you consider choosing between all 4 Selenium implementations I just showed to you, so native Selenium WebDriver, Protractor, Nightwatch.js, and WebDriver.io, I would recommend you choosing WebDriver.io. So we have a WebDriver.io maintainer here on this conference. It's Christian Broman. And if you have some doubts about should I use it or not, please better ask him. You can find him somewhere. So he knows exactly why should you use it, all the pitfalls of it, because why WebDriver.io is so cool. It's not maintained by official Selenium team, but even though it's much better in terms of documentation, in terms of community, in terms of new features that are coming. So if you just go to their website, you will see that it's much easier to work with this solution. The only problem we had with WebDriver IO is their upgrade from version 4 to version 5. If you were using WebDriver IO 4 and you had to upgrade to version 5, you probably had to write lots of your code, but that happens with all major upgrades. And this transition happened because they tried to take more of V3C protocol into their own code and make a more fluent integration. But anyway, for Selenium integration, WebDriver IO is very cool. They do even have support of page objects, so Network.js can't have this. But in WebDriver IO, it's really easy to do so. And they made you easier to write a test, so you don't need to chain or wait for promises. You just can write traditional code line by line, and they synchronize all these calls for you. So WebDriver IO is pretty cool if you want native WebDriver integration. But if you're scared of WebDriver, of Selenium, that you need to install some extra Java tools, and you want just to make things just work from the box, you start with Cypress. Cypress is really highly promoted as a tool for newcomers, newbies, because you can just install it. It has web interface. You can start typing tests, and they are working fine. But you should understand that even if you wrote very fastly 5 or 10 tests, is that a good idea to build all your test automation on top of it? Before doing so, consider its limitation and the principles behind Cypress. Cypress is a tool that provides you internal browser control. So it brings you all the limits of controlling the browser from an frame to your test. So as you see, they have their own official list of limitations on their website. Just Google it. You will see that you are not allowed to use XPath. There are no support for page objects, no file uploads, downloads, no multiple browser stubs, frames, and much more and much more and much more. So you can't use Cypress on different domains. So it's not in pure terms a tool for end-to-end test automation. So we are not emulating our user. What we actually do, we run integration tests for our components. That's where Cypress works really great. So then code looks like this. So probably yesterday was on the talk on Cypress, and you saw how easy to start, how easy to write it, and this code executed inside the browser. It's very nice. So what really disturbs me is how the Cypress is promoted. So I don't know who started this marketing bullshit, but there are lots of blog posts in the internet that Cypress is going to kill Selenium. To be honest, Cypress didn't create something absolutely new. It's not IE, machine learning, modern technology. This is Selenium RC, Selenium that was way before current Selenium, but turned into the new fancy interface. So Cypress is just as Selenium was before they decided, hey, we are doing bullshit, let's rewrite it. So Cypress and Selenium, they are different. And even though you can use Cypress where you have used Selenium, you should just look into the list. Do you need cross-browser testing? If so, go with WebDriver. Do you need full browser control? Go with WebDriver. If you need faster and speed and more integration with your application, Cypress is a good choice to you. So it's really up to your application and up to your decision, but consider limitations. Another thing that disturbs me in Cypress is that Cypress is a private company which received lots of investments. So all the Selenium team, all these big ecosystems, they do not have that amount of engineers and money. So Selenium is like, I think, 5 people, not more. And all the Selenium Foundation have much less than Cypress received in about a year. So can this be a bubble? Who knows? I don't know. So I'm not a businessman, but I believe that everything can happen to this product. So it's not a big deal to you, but consider that maybe they are turning their money to take more users and take more money from them. So I don't know really how it works, but I would love to receive this money as well. I also developed testing framework. But I don't know how to provide revenue from these 5 millions. I don't know. So will Cypress show me the way to make money out of open source? That would be great. So again, as for end-to-end testing framework, no. So Cypress is very limited. Again, it's only one browser and it makes it useless for lots of cases. Much better tool for Google Chrome is Puppeteer. So Puppeteer is like a mix of both worlds of WebDriver and Cypress. So what I mean is that Puppeteer is controlling a browser, only Chrome browser, now and Firefox too, but mostly Chrome. And it also provides you with external browser control. So it doesn't push you inside the frame, but allows you to do all the actions user can. And it can give you much more than just regular WebDriver. So WebDriver protocol is very limited because of the standard. WebDriver should support Internet Explorer, Safari, Firefox, whatever it is, and they have unified protocol for all the browsers. So lots of things they do not support from the box, like setting headers, they do not, waiting for events, so they are very limited. While Puppeteer is based on the Google Chrome, and they take all advantage out of it. So they have full API control out of Chrome. So remember again this DevTools stuff here. You see how many things you can do. You can see the network request, calculate performance, execute some JavaScript, look into the DOM, and it appears that all of those tools which are in DevTools, they are available via protocol. So you can use everything from your DevTools and much more in your tests. So absolutely full control. So everything you can do, even test file downloads, which was a problem for Selenium, it's not a problem for Puppeteer because you get so much power with it. So the code is quite different from what we've seen before. The new word await was added. The case here is that Puppeteer by itself is not a testing framework. It's not a tool just for testing. So it's a tool for browser automation. So it doesn't provide you the ways to write your tests. So, but to make you have your code look nicer, it says that after each call to a browser, please use await keyword to synchronize all your test executions. So this is the modern way of dealing with promises in Node.js. Use await for every call and make tests synchronous. So once you have lost some await, your test will break. But this is pretty explicit way to show that all those operations are synchronous. We need to make a call to a browser, receive response, and synchronize this stuff. But you see, the code is pretty nice. The API is very elegant in terms of controlling browser. It's really easy to use it. However, because the Puppeteer is just a library, so it's number 3 in our list of tools we need to build a testing framework. We need to decide what we should use for framework, for assertions, and to runner, because Puppeteer doesn't provide us with this. And again, very cool tool in this ecosystem, very outstanding one is TestCafe. Test Cafe can be seen as a Cypress, but with the cross-browser support and without this fancy interface they have. So Test Cafe does pretty much the same as does Cypress, so it is integrated inside of your browser. But because they use some very cool technology, a proxy server that proxifies all requests to your web pages, it is not. Doesn't have limits that Cypress have in terms of controlling iframes, file uploads, and so on and so on. So they have give you more control. They can run on all browsers because they run inside the browsers. They can work even on mobile browsers. So I would consider using Test Cafe as a cheap and fast cross-browser testing framework of nowadays. So it's really great. The tests look pretty much the same as all tests. And again, await keyword plus chains, whatever you like, you can use. So even some page objects can be used, which is great. So, and here's the problem: how we should choose the proper browser driver. And this was a very brief overview of how those tools work. Now you need to collect your requirements for test automation for your website. Will it have third-party integrations? Will it have iframes, file uploads, downloads? Do you need cross-browser support? So, and then you go with a check mark to see, is this tool good enough for you to use today? WebDriver, Cypress, Test Cafe, whatever. So learn a bit about the upgrade strategy of those libraries. So if Nightwatch.js was never upgraded to something major, probably they won't be upgraded in any day. If there was some upgrade problems in Puppeteer or WebDriver, probably you will face similar problems in next version. Also, it's a good idea to look how the team helped their users to upgrade. So because in WebDriver they have a really good upgrade post, so it was not so hard to upgrade by following it. Also, please look into the source code because all those tools were written by different engineers, and some of them are written really nice, like Puppeteer. Some of them are really ugly. I won't say which one. But if you can't understand what happens in this code, even if you don't like it, is how in terms of, I don't know, not rational feeling but some irrational understanding of this code. Is it nice or not nice? Because once something happens wrong, you will need to dig into this code and try to understand what happened there to fix the issue. So some summary about how different tools handle asynchronity. So Selenium-Webdriver from version 4 asks you to explicitly define to use this async await keywords. So every call to a browser should be prefixed with await, 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 await. So we will always know what's happening. So this is not a very good approach for testing because it adds a visual noise to our tests, and it's really annoying to you to add a void keyword just for every line. So this stuff looks really great for front-end applications from servers, but in test automation, everything we do is asynchronous. So await will be everywhere. So Protractor 5 solved this by introducing a pattern called control flow. So they, instead of asking you to control your promises, they were keeping this in the global storage and put them into stack. So they resolved these promises by their own. And the problem with this approach was that if you didn't put the new coming promises to this list, well, it will be completely unsynchronized. So this was a problem. So in Protractor 6, you will probably also switch to async await as more reliable solutions. So WebDriver IO has also support of async await, and they have very cool technology called fibers. So the fibers allow you to work with asynchronous code like it is synchronous. So it just works, but not on all setups. So I don't know. Just tried. So WebDriver, you have sync mode. In this mode, you don't even need to think about promises. That's cool. In Cypress, they do not have async await support, and because they usually operate inside the browser and not in the place where you wrote your code. So everything inside the browser happens asynchronously. So you don't need to wait for stuff. So they do not bother with adding async await. However, it has its own problems. So Puppeteer is using async await, TestCafe async await as well. So if you come into GS, you will need to learn how to deal with asynchronity. If you are new to it, use the tools with control flow. If you want more control, use async await. So there one outstanding testing framework which wasn't really mentioned here is Cucumber. People use Cucumber to as a wrapper on top of the browser testing framework. It solves some problems, and I don't have time to explain more about Cucumber and how to use it. It provides support for testing libraries. The code in Cucumber, you know, it looks exactly on the different languages. But it doesn't have integration with Cypress, for instance, with TestCafe, with libraries that provide you the full stack of test framework, runner, and so on. So Cucumber have very limited integrations. Again, get your requirements, learn ecosystems, and choose the testing stack. And that's how we build a perfect testing framework. But probably you won't do it from the first time very nice. So maybe, after all, this won't be the snowman we tried to build. And here are the problems you may face in the future. So today you started to use framework A, but in the next year, the framework B, very new, very cool one, which received lots of investments coming, and they say they will kill Cypress. Cypress, old technology, no one should use it. So you will want to switch to this new, more fancy framework. And your previous testing framework will be not maintained tomorrow. And there will be lots of edge cases which you couldn't predict when you started doing your choice. And this is the biggest problem of all those libraries explained. Even though they looked similarly in terms of how you write your tests, they all have click, they all have something to type in fields, opening a browser, they all had different API. So migrating from one to another, it's a big pain. So you will need just to rewrite from scratch everything. And yeah, this is the problem in our ecosystem. I hope you understand what I'm coming to. Yeah, so those of you who was on my talk yesterday, that can be a good idea to separate your browser control from your actual tests, and it's not it shouldn't be a problem when you write your test. Will it be executed in a Puppeteer, WebDriver, or whatever comes next? You should be focused on your test. So that's where Concept.js coming in. It's meta testing framework which supports different drivers: WebDriver IO, Puppeteer, Protractor, TestCafe, and the thing is that it delegates execution to any of those tools. And yeah, depending on the tool you selected, the execution process will be different. So Puppeteer will be much faster because they operate, they do not use Selenium. I think it's faster 3 times than regular Selenium. If you may try to run your test in Puppeteer. If you are happy with it, continue. If you don't like it, you just switch into one point into configuration, and then you go with WebDriver. So as easy as it is. We also have TestCafe, which also integrated. You can choose, try different browser drivers and choose the best one for you. The tests look like this. So we abstract our execution from a browser and focus on test scenario. We use page objects. When we need, we can use awaits. And we try to make the test as clear, as user-friendly as possible. So final thoughts. So if you are a good professional JavaScript developer, for end-to-end testing, you should choose WebDriver IO. It's the best Selenium implementation as of today. So people who use it really love it. If you need something beyond WebDriver, but get more control of a browser, Puppeteer is your choice. But it's only for Chrome or Firefox. If you don't really know what to choose right now, Concept.js is a good way to start because you can try different tools to figure out what testing framework can work better to you, and it also gives you more focus on your tests and not on the browser control. So probably you don't need to learn all the differences between these tools. Cypress.io is really great for front-end developers, for component testing, for single-page applications, where you don't need to use this legacy iframe stuff and so on. Test Cafe is for multi-browser testing, and Cucumber if you need real BDD. So I am done. I hope we have some time for questions.